Cinnamon snickerdoodle coffee. I would have never thought. Woo! The Golden Stallion, the man of tomorrow, Savzu, the rated R radio star, the one that some call, the most interesting anarchist alive today. Here for a little Wednesday Q&A. And you know, I've got a very unique Wednesday Q&A to do with you here. And it's unique because I'm actually only going to do one, I'll say email, really it's a message through the private Patreon messenger, which Sovereign Tech patrons, and thank you all for being Sovereign Tech patrons, exclusively have access to be able to message me with that. It's such a great, efficient little system. And of course, I leave you anonymous unless you want me to mention your name, and you'll have to tell me you want me to do that specifically, which has happened in the past on Q&A episodes. And of course, it's great to be in the studio here. The lovely and hyper-intelligent Dr. Stephanie Murphy is still away. She's at Acapulco, which I am not there. And boy, you know, I got a few people asking me, why didn't I go? And a bunch of others already knew why, you know, that I don't go. I guess I'll answer that. And then I have a question, kind of a funny question related to that. Really, it's the question that I'll get to is, what do you do when Stephanie's not around, like when she's away? Well, I go insane. I mean, I talked about that on this past week's Sovereign Tech, but ooh, I get pretty bad. I think I said, yeah, like I just start quoting these terrible, you know, like I'll just quote from a bunch of movies or even like history books, just like all these things that, you know, these tyrants have said forever. Maybe as anarchists no, never mind. Am I not merciful? Little Commodus there for you from Gladiator. Anyway, sorry. Okay. So why didn't I go to Acapulco? Well, quite frankly, and I won't spend a lot of time on this. We have a bunch of questions just in this one email that I want to get to, and I want to read it because I'm dead serious. I felt touched. Just me, and you don't have to feel this way, but this is just me. Like there are certain events that I really want to boycott when I think that they do bullshit, or when like their speaker lineup and a bunch of other things is, the deck is kind of stacked with a bunch of morons or a bunch of like people really that shouldn't even be talking, especially about the things that they're talking about. Not because they're not knowledgeable, say when it comes to anarchism or economics or something like that. I mean, a lot of these people are absolutely brilliant when it comes to those things, but that honestly in their personal lives, which you can say shouldn't matter, but when you're talking about anarchism and human interactions and all that, it kind of matters. I don't want to support these guys, and I don't want to support events that support them. You know, that's just me. I mean, obviously the love of my life went to this event. In fact, she's a speaker there, and obviously I'd love to support her, but I just think that, you know, it's a funny thing. It's a really funny thing. 2 points I want to make to you here. Okay. One is that, you know, from back when Stefan Molyneux, you know, had good things to say, we're talking quite a few years ago, but, you know, he used to talk about that. Well, you know, we don't need all these government forces and everything. You know, he'd say we can just ostracize people. We'll just ostracize them when they act out of line, or, you know, that doesn't match with a virtuous life or first principles or something like this. Right. And, you know, I get that. Like, I don't really agree with ostracism. That's another subject for another time if you want to ask me about it. But frankly, like, so many of these people have done so much shit that is so deserving of ostracism, and nobody ostracizes anybody ever. It just doesn't happen. Where is all this ostracism that's supposed to solve problems within the community? Doesn't exist. You know, again, I disagree with ostracism, but I mean, I don't even have to disagree with it because nobody fucking does it. Doesn't matter if a guy, like, you know, effectively puts a gal in a slave contract. Doesn't matter if someone's, you're pretty much ripping people off with land deals. You go down, I could go down the list. It doesn't matter. They still get welcomed with open arms no matter where they go and what they do. And it's disgusting. So that's my thoughts on it. Okay. Now, I'm not judging anybody else. I'm not. Okay. Because if you don't believe in ostracism, well, then, like me, well, great. Then, then there you go. Like, even though you keep them around, you're just acting on your principles. But it feels so off, to me. So, I mean, like, even, honestly, even, and sorry, if you're one of the subscribers that like listens to the tech, we're not going to get into a whole bunch of tech in this episode. And I'm opening up talking about a bunch of liberty and anarchist shit, which at some point, well, let's just keep going. Yeah, I brought up the point about ostracism. I had a second point I wanted to make. Oh, well, I was going to say that, look, even in the Free State Project, like I get so tired of just the rampant stupidity about how the Free State Project handles things so many times. And I've talked about these very openly on Sovereign Tech. This isn't some kind of secret, talking behind somebody's back. I thought the way that they handled the recording of the Edward Snowden talk at Liberty Forum last year, not this past one, was ridiculous. And in fact, I can only imagine was just filled with outright lies or just outright stupidity. It was ridiculous. Like, because a guy was recording the Edward Snowden talk, and a person with the Free State Project said, "Do not record this, please. Please don't be recording this." Blah blah blah, and like the argument was for that the lawyers or something would have to go through the talk first, and it's just like, are you kidding me? It was a Google fucking Hangout. You think the NSA doesn't have automatic access to that? Like, I didn't buy the reasons. I didn't really get it. The only conclusion I could come to is that they just didn't want, or the only people that they wanted seeing this were people that either went to, like, say, the Free State Project's YouTube page or something, or that paid for the ticket to be there, that they really didn't want it getting out there. I absolutely cannot believe, I've never had it confirmed, but I cannot believe that Edward Snowden would be that dumb to think that somehow he could control the words he's saying over a Google Hangout in any degree that matters. So, kind of honestly, in some ways, kind of fuck it. Fuck Liberty Forum. I mean, I would have gone this year, just other things went down that I didn't end up going. It's just, there's times where like, I get so mad because some of the stuff's really basic. It's not like an argument that like I'm boycotting these places because I don't know, because they believe in contracts or something. It's not some like penny ante thing. Like it's really ridiculous, very open stuff that goes on that, I can't believe it. I guess I'm kind of, boycotting ostracism. See, that's a whole other conversation too. Pork Fest. I had some issues with that as well. Whatever. Apparently, some of the people that talk about, or, that maybe had a role in this sort of thing, realized they handled a lot of it poorly. Yeah, you did. I don't know. Anyway, I just, don't mind me. And all right, I'm going to ride this just a little bit. Okay. And again, I apologize if you feel like you're not getting your Patreon's money's worth with me just, shitting on libertarians and anarchists, just let me know. Okay. And I'll make it right, by you. I promise. I really would. Every time I'm actually kind of becoming notorious for shitting on and for ripping on, libertarians and, what's more particularly known as anarcho-capitalists. Yeah. I mean, it's for ripping on them. And whatever. Okay. Someone's got to do it. And what I don't get, this is maybe the most amazing thing of when I do this. Okay. Because there's plenty to rip on. And really, just like in the tech world, in some ways, you don't want to delve into people's personal lives, right? Like, I mean, in some ways, what happens in someone's personal life have to do with, maybe the technology they're releasing. And you usually want to follow that rule. Not always, though. Okay. There are times where, based upon what somebody's trying to do, that I think honestly, what you know of their personal life, or especially maybe what they write about in a blog post or what somebody puts out in a video, has bearing. Okay. For example, this is here in the tech world alone, and we'll get back to libertarians and anarchists in a second. Okay. In the tech world, so Steam It. Yep. Steam It. That's Steam It. Dan Larimer, the guy who's actually, largely my encounters with him, he has been a very nice guy. Okay. And I mean, in my encounters with him, he wrote up a post, it's on Steam It, where he talks about how he got here, how he got to where he is. And he talks about some stuff that was clearly very painful for him. Okay. But this is all out in the open. This isn't privileged information or anything. And he talks about how he, kind of lost, he got married, got in a divorce, lost a ton of stuff in the divorce, made some, in my opinion, kind of, like blatantly misogynist. I know some people want to tread softly on that word. Go ahead. But this is a case where no, it was pretty fucking open. Pretty misogynist statements. And you could see that, based upon what he said, how he talked about his divorce, in my opinion, if I was doing some psychoanalysis, okay, I would, I come to the conclusion that, he lost everything and now he wants to work in money that the government can't take away from him. And believe me, I can get that. Okay. I'm a person that went through a divorce myself. I understand. But then that colors what he's doing. And in a multitude of ways. Why is he working in cryptocurrencies? And then also, does it become concerning that he's building a social platform when, how's his social life? Right? This is, another great case is to quote Sergey Brin, who said it with a bit of, being joculant, but he was serious really at the same time, in that he said, Sergey Brin, of course, one of the, co-founders of Google. He said, I had no business making a social media network. He's talking about Google Plus. I had no business making that because, what do I know about a social life? Exactly. Bingo. It was so that, oh man, that is one of the greatest things ever said by a tech company or by a guy that runs one. To have that amount of humility to say, what the fuck was I thinking? I don't know how to be sociable. Why would I create a social network? Exactly. So there's times where a person's personal life, the personal attitudes and all that, they absolutely do color, tech. And so bringing it back to libertarians and anarchists, when you're telling people how they should be living, how they should be, what human interaction should look like. And these people do. This is exactly what they do. They give you quote unquote solutions. Like I've always said, a lot of times the ideologies themselves are fine. Just reading anarcho-capitalism, it's yeah, okay. But then you look at the people, or you're reading about libertarianism, you can kind of get it. But then you look at the people that supposedly practice it or espouse it. And I'm not saying all of them, of course not, but certainly a lot of what I call the loudmouths in these movements. Okay. What libertarians think, fucking Gary Johnson. Right. And then with the ANCAPs, well, the list of names is I'd spend the whole show giving you that list. But there's no practice of their principles. And there's no real pragmatism either. Usually you just end up, with people being assholes. You can ask a lot of guys, they'll a lot of guys in this space movement, whatever, they'll tell you, they say it's amazing how much libertarianism or ANCAPism gets disproved just by looking at libertarians and ANCAPs, by the lives that they lead or whatever. And it baffles me. This is the part that baffles me. Is that any time or many times when I complain about somebody, or when I want to shed some light or whatever, and I can complain. I'm a human being. And I can try and do something about it too, which, I always try to do things about things. That's why I have a consultancy business. That's why I have a podcast. That's why I make video games. That's why I do all kinds of shit. It's why I make albums, of historical texts so that people can learn about it in an interesting fashion, because I recognize that the reason people don't know about this shit is because it's kind of boring to read it as is. So I try to spice it up and make it exciting. Okay. So I never just complain. I do. I solve things. Anyway, I'll talk about these people, and then people come out of nowhere and just say, where did they, I'll talk about something maybe that this such and such person said, and they'll come out and they'll say, where did this person say this? And I'm kind of like shocked. It's like, it's not like I belong to any secret social circles. I really don't. I don't belong to any. In fact, I'm almost insulted by the fact that I don't belong to any of these things, right? How am I seeing and it takes me seconds to either find the article, the podcast, the post, the social media post or whatever, where the person said this. And then even when I show it, the person's just like, oh, well, they probably didn't mean that. It's like, what? And then you show them another, and then it ends up, they end up tagging the person. I mean, it gets nuts. It gets nuts. But like, how is everybody missing the shit? That these dolts are putting out there. I don't know. I mean, yeah, I get privy, I guess, sometimes, to things that not everybody knows about. That happens. It's not from some kind of secret social circle or anything, but I guess to some degree I get privy to that sort of stuff. And look, folks, I just, and hey, I am not a perfect person. I have fucked up big time. I have fucked up in recent years. I am in no way saying, oh, I am the high and mighty. I am the embodiment of virtue and all that. By no fucking means. I am not. But let's be clear that, I'm hard pressed to think of people in libertarianism and anarchism, aside from the everyday people that, frankly, like keep this thing going round and round. And I mean the people that you don't know their names of, that are in any way deserving of praise. Like, or that deserve even getting a like on their social media platforms, or even, I mean, it's so bad. It's so fucking bad. And it drives me nuts that nobody sees anything about it. And it drives me nuts that supposedly ostracism is supposed to be the ultimate solution, for this. And nobody's even practicing it now. Like nobody's even trying. Baffled. Fucking baffled. So anyway, all of that said, oh God, I took 20 minutes. Satan, sorry. I apologize, but I got that off my chest. I feel a lot better now. So yeah, as I said, did I say this on a podcast somewhere? Yes, I said it on the observationism episode. I said, you know what? I said, metaphorically, kill your heroes. Really. Yeah, I said that a couple weeks ago now. But anyway, okay. So yeah, so the question that got sent into me is a person asking me, what do I do when Stephanie's, away for a little while? Which, it happens, and it's happened in the past. We're separated for, certain, usually just a few days at a time or something like that. But 99.99999% of the time we are always together. I mean, it's, yeah. So that's why I go nuts, because it's literally like another part of me is just, isn't here. Not nuts in like a mad, in like an angry way by any means, but just, it feels off, admittedly. Anyway, when she's not here, I have to soothe that part of me. And so, frankly, I go to the movies. I watch Star Trek, play some video games. I mean, obviously I do a ton of work inside of all that. But that's it. That's really all I do. I hole up. I mean, that's that, and I record podcasts for you. How about that? You like that? So anyway, that answers that question. That is what I do, folks. when I am alone, I just, yeah. And you can never, a great listener actually said this to me the other day. He's like, really, there is no such thing as enough Star Trek. And I'm like, God damn it, you're right. There's never enough Star Trek. In fact, just a shout out to that listener. He cracked a joke about this. So this will be totally insider stuff, but I'll give him a little Gowron. Glory to you and your house. I tried. It's a little Star Trek quote. Okay. All right. So I want to get into, there, that answers that question from a great patron. I want to get into the questions here that I had from Patreon. Actually, well, not the question. It's one email, but it's a bunch of questions. I want to read it. And again, I'll leave the person anonymous, but it starts off with, Stallion, I've been wanting to write you for a while now, and I reckon I better pull the trigger before I get too many questions/comments built up. And I'm long-winded as it is, but something tells me you're probably a fast reader, and I think this message will require a bit of setup to try to fully emphasize what an impact you and Sovereigntech have had on me, and I am honored by that, sir. Anyway, I'll keep reading here. A bit of background info about me. I didn't give a shit about politics or philosophical theory all throughout my younger life, up until shortly before the 2012 election. If I was 21 at the time. I saw a compilation video featuring Ron Paul saying things I'd never really heard from any politician before. It was consistent and honest, and it really sparked my interest because he was saying things that seemed radical. I looked up the word libertarian on Wikipedia and eagerly jumped down the rabbit hole of exploration into all the usual websites, videos, figureheads, and history. It seemed like I finally found a worldview that spoke to me and all the things I already naturally valued in my own life. I could bore you with dozens of more anecdotes of my younger self and how I felt like it was I was set up to be rebellious or different or weird or blah, 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 blah. But I won't, and I'm deep enough into the social circles now to realize I'm not exactly special in that regard. Okay, so I want to stop here for a second. I want to talk about this little segment here. And a lot of people, yeah, like he recognized, okay, like the emailer recognized. A lot of people, have gone down a similar path. You ask a lot of people, how did you become an anarchist? How did you become a libertarian? Whatever words you want to use and whatever you want to identify yourself as, please feel free. I really don't care. And usually it ends up, the answer will be Ron Paul. And that's totally valid. For me, it was actually Judge Andrew Napolitano. I've told that story before. But same idea. He said things that I've never heard anyone say before, and in this case, it was on national TV, probably similar to Ron Paul. And it just like, holy shit, and it just strikes a chord with you, something that you already knew. Now, the interesting thing here, okay, is that and this ties in nicely with what I was just talking about, the cynicism that I was just expressing for about the first 20 minutes of this Q&A, of this Wednesday Q&A for Sovereigntech, is shared by many. But here's the interesting thing. And this is no insult to certainly the emailer or anybody else. It's not meant to be an insult. It's just a statement of what I see as fact, or at least anecdotal, or, wildly anecdotal, or you know what I mean. And that is that a lot of the people, so I got hooked. So the emailer got hooked in 2012. Okay. So Ron Paul had two big runs, of course, 2008, 2012. He had other runs too, but you know what I mean? So a lot of the people that got excited in 2008, they're the ones that share, shall we say, my jadedness, today, I think. The 2012, libertarians, maybe a lot of them, are still kind of getting into this. Again, the emailers clearly done their homework and, they've deep dived, but I'm just saying everybody, goes at different paces and all that, certainly. So I'm not talking about the emailer in this, but there seems to be like these certain events that create waves of new libertarians and all this. And what I notice kind of happens is that, and I get it on social media myself, is that a lot of these new, kind of new wave libertarians, again, the emailer's not that anymore. I'm just saying, or, just using his example. A lot of these new wave libertarians, like, they don't understand. They're like, what do you why are you complaining about liberty, about libertarians or the libertarian message or the anarcho-capitalist message and all this stuff? And it's just, it makes for weird and really unfortunate, I think, conversations. Unfortunate because usually the jaded person will just jump down that person's throat saying, you don't know, and it'll be really mean. And even I can fall prey to this too, to where, it's new blood and they haven't been around to see that all the people, maybe a lot of the names that they've heard of are shysters, that they're scumbags. So, it's just, it's a cycle of things. I guess it's just how it goes. There's really nothing that can be done about it. So anyway, emailer, yeah, a lot of people have your experience, and you cannot imagine how happy I am that you are here, and I know who you are, and really personally, I'm happy that that you found your way, and you did it. You found your way. Don't let anyone tell you differently, like you owe somebody something. Okay, so reading on here, suffice it to say, fast forward to almost 2 years ago, that would be 2014, when I'm about to start a data entry job and deciding to give those wacky newfangled podcasts a try. I find a little radio show called Free Talk Live. This was during Porkfest. Those were the first episodes I listened to, and I felt like my whole world expanded even more. It wasn't just me looking up random articles on my own time and stewing with a million thoughts and questions. It was Ian and Mark, of course, those are the hosts of Free Talk Live, actually having discussions about libertarianism in a real practical way and sharing different shades of the philosophy and how it would be used to affect real change in your own life and the lives of those around you. It was also free from the confines of academic rigor and the potential to prance about and pretend that using big words and quoting Rothbard enough times would substitute for a compelling and down-to-earth argument. I was hooked. Right on. Now, just to, take a moment. I mean, this is another thing too, and another natural path, and it certainly was for me, is finding Free Talk Live, And Mark Edge himself will tell you that Free Talk Live is really the elementary school of liberty. Not to say it can't go beyond that. It certainly can, but and it does, many times. And there's great people involved. Daryl Perry. I mean, just awesome, awesome guys, involved in many ways with that show, and gals. But, for a lot of people that, they recognize it sort of as a stepping stone. Okay. In fact, actually, both Ian and Mark are at Anarchapulco as well. And on the February 26th episode, again, we're in 12,017 here, HE. On the February 26th episode, they had Stephanie on in the very last segment. And it was really sweet because they're like, come on, Brian, you need to be down here. They talked about me for a minute, and, both Mark said he was a huge fan of me, and Ian was very kind, to say how talented I am and, just how great Sovereign Tech is, and I was really honored by that, to hear that sort of thing. And admittedly, like, a part of me wanted to be there, just to hang out on Free Talk Live. Cause I used to host Free Talk Live, I was a co-host, I guess you could say, but I would do first share as well. I've talked about that on Patreon episodes. And Stephanie, of course, was incredibly gracious. And I just, if she's listening to this, I love you to death. And you know that, she was so great, saying how, anyway, she's wonderful. Like I said, God is walking the earth, as I've said before. So anyway, yeah, Free Talk Live, definitely, a lot how a lot of people, get on board and really get into podcasting too. I mean, definitely. And they've been going over 10 years, which is just phenomenal. Okay, reading more of the email here. So to contrast how much I loved and still do Free Talk Live with your own podcast, Sovereign Tech, I think it was maybe 6 months or so into listening to Free Talk Live when I first heard your name mentioned, or maybe it was the night when you actually called in. Because I had turned into a full-on podcast devotee at this point, I sought you out and decided to start listening. Now, several months later, again, this was 2 years ago or something, I can easily say that you have had more of an impact on my worldview and thought process than FTL, that being Free Talk Live, ever did, even though I've not even listened to you for half as long. Now, I mean, what can I say to that? Like, thank you. I'm honored. I don't have words for that. Reading on, which is a big reason why I'm going to up my Patreon support for you to $5 per month next cycle. Thank you. Thank you so much. Though I assure you the words are far more important, and I really appreciate that. The same amount I donate to FTL. Good for you. Absolutely. It is worthy of donation. It is absolutely every bit as important for a show like Sovereign Tech to exist as it is for a nationally syndicated radio show to, quote unquote, preach to the normies, so to speak. Haha. And yeah, he put the haha there. So yeah, wow. Yes, thank you so much, for saying that, certainly. And we do have questions to get to here in a minute. But yeah, So generally, like, I don't, unless I'm listening, and sometimes I do still listen to Free Talk Live. I mean, it's sporadic. There was a time where I listened like every night. In fact, it used to be kind of dinner listening for Stephanie and I. But I still listen in here and there. Absolutely. But I often get asked, to be on. In fact, the other night I was asked to be on. I was otherwise engaged. Otherwise, I'm always happy to call in, when they want somebody with, some expertise on. But I'm honored when they ask me to be on. It really means a lot to me. It might have been a night where I was asked to call in, and I did, and woohoo, good times. So anyway, and yes, I totally agree with what the emailer is saying. It's still important for shows like that quote unquote preach to the normies to exist. It's very important. Okay, so reading on. It took me a moment to put my finger on it, but I think I can now finally attempt to articulate the weird space that you and your personality occupy in my mind. It's because your views and arguments and opinions are simultaneously something that I agree with and disagree with. So specifically, like to the nth degree. Not only do I fist pump at my work desk and try to lip sync along with those Ric Flair-esque woos, woo, gotcha. But I also shake my head in disbelief sometimes. And to your credit, the fist pumps are definitely a higher percentage. I have to firmly vouch as a listener for two of the things that I've heard you say often on the podcast. That you started the show because you've never heard your views well represented in the media and the worlds that you occupied and consumed. And also that you are, quite literally, in my estimation, the most interesting anarchist in the world. By the way, has anyone memed that with the Dos Equis advertisement guy wearing triple black with your face on it? Because that should be a thing. Now, I'll tell you something. People have actually memed about me with the Dos Equis guy, saying something like, if I, I don't always like something on Facebook, but when I do, it's this was like from a year or two ago, maybe. But if I do, it's something from Brian Sovereign. I know that's one of the memes that's been done with the Dos Equis guy that I didn't make at all. In fact, Nathan Frazier, who I just love, he's the guy that made that. Anyway, wow. I mean, I'll speak to this quickly. I hear this a lot that, people want to listen because they don't know what I'm going to say next, be it good or bad, in their own mind. And great. And the real honor is that people keep listening, regardless if they agree with me or not. So, thank you, for that. That really, I mean, that I take that as a total compliment. I love when people disagree with me. I really do, because that means somebody's hopefully thinking for themselves. I mean, if they're disagreeing with me about, the validity of the state, well, then they're being kind of a drone, maybe, but maybe. I mean, there's brilliant people that are statists, make no mistake. But yeah, anyway, I do like to hear it when people do that. And I love knowing that people are fist pumping out there. I try to make the show exciting. So I'm glad that people are feeling, or it sounds like at least this person's feeling the excitement, though certainly I've heard it from others as well. So, and it's good to get the vindication. Thank you that you recognize as a podcast addict yourself, that you recognize, no one else talks about what I talk about. And I really, again, I really appreciate that. And folks, please, I'm really not reading this to just pump my own ego. I don't have to read it on the air to do that. If I was going to do that, I would have read it maybe like on a Sovereign Tech Prime episode, that way I can boast to everybody. But this is just something, that this is, the Patreon content is for the patrons. Okay. So this is from a patron, and, let's discuss it. And if you have thoughts based upon what he said, or, whatever, I'm open to hearing those too. Okay, so now we'll go on here. I hope this doesn't stray into hero worship territory. I know you don't like that kind of thing, and I actually think that's pretty fucking awesome and endearing. But I've listened to quite a bit of your content, several Sex and Science Hour episodes, the conversations you had on the School Sucks project with Brett, and pretty much every Sovereign Tech episode since around episode 180-ish. You consistently blow my mind on several fronts. You're so passionate, so intelligent, well-read, perfectly straddling the line between hipster to the sake of being a hipster, straddling the line between hipster for the sake of being a hipster and genuine, unabashed love for the things that make you happy, even if they are deemed as cheesy or out of style by the mainstream. It makes me jealous sometimes, but in a positive and encouraging way, just because I don't know if I fully embrace the mindset to that extent that I would like to. We also have several random and disparate things in common. I'm obsessed with 2000s metal, similar age to you in the 80s, I believe. I love cold weather and the snow. Woo! Right on, baby. There you go. I grew up immersed in Star Trek and Star Wars, mostly thanks to my librarian mom, who was a giant science fiction fan. Trek novels lining the shelf of our basement. All the original episodes taped on VHS, other bits of obscure memorabilia and such. Man, yeah, I feel you on all that. The VHS tapes around. If I wasn't making them, my dad was buying them, certainly. And the novels, I mean, the first big novel I remember reading was Star Wars. It was actually Heir to the Empire when it came out. And it was like in third grade, impressed the shit out of my teachers too. But after that, like my main thing for reading, and it's in some ways it's still kind of true, is Star Trek novels. I still read them to this day. I love them. And about the 2000s metal. Yeah, no, I dig it, man. Like Saliva, Disturbed. I mean, the whole lot of them. I'm even a big fan of Nickelback, quite frankly. Not so much like everything after Silver Side Up anyway. Okay, let's read on. I was raised Christian, but my parents could have easily passed as Jewish. They never went to organized church and Dad had a big map of Israel and a giant Star of David. On our basement wall. Of course, I have fully moved away from that BS in young adulthood. Haha. I also have a very open attitude about sex and some highly libertine tendencies, even though I haven't fully acted out some of my fantasies. But my wife and I are young, and she's open to things as well, so it's not like it's too late. Woo! I love it. Good for you, man. But yeah, it's really impressive how you have just taken all the things you're into and fused them together into this very purposeful and informative voice where you always manage to exude respect, empathy, and peace despite yelling and being angry at stuff much of the time. Sometimes it leaves me dumbfounded because the topics are such a roller coaster and your persona behind the mic can make me care about or think about things that I never thought I would give a shit about. I'm way more wary about IoT devices, for example. I'm not even particularly technically proficient, despite having maybe more skills than the average user. Yet I listen to a one-man, 2-hour tech show every week. I think that would be hard to explain to most people. But the selling point is you. It really is. So you best believe if I ever get my shit together enough to vault into this podcast space like I want to, Savzu will be a primary source of inspiration. Thank you. Thank you so much. And I like I tell everybody make a fucking podcast, really. Because especially if you're an anarchist, we need all the anarchist podcasts we can get. I mean that. I'm being dead serious. Okay, so now that I've stroked your ego a fair amount, all legit, I meant it 100%. I hope you'll indulge me with a few questions. If anything here is interesting enough for a Q&A or a Sovereign Tech Prime episode, then that's fantastic. Or if there's a past episode I missed where any of these questions are answered in detail, feel free to point me there. So, okay, now we'll get into the questions now that we've gone, well, shy of 40 minutes. So that's pretty good. Anyway, I like I said, I was really moved by everything that this emailer had to say. And I wanted to share it and I wanted to let him know, and I know you're listening. I want you to know, emailer, that this made my fucking year. Like, thank you. Not like, I get nice emails from people, no doubt about it. I certainly get lots of hate mail too. But this was just, yeah, you get it, man. That's all I can say is you get it. And that means a lot to me because when somebody gives me such detailed, such a detailed response, to what they hear, then I can feel understood, and I do. And so yeah, thank you for that. Okay, let's get into the questions because this is a Q&A episode, God damn it. One. Since I heard about you on Free Talk Live, and I know you and Stephanie used to co-host on Sunday nights, right? Yes, it was Sunday nights. Do you have any sort of recommendations for good episodes that you recall? A broad topic that may have been on the show notes for an episode that I can use to search the Free Talk Live archive. Even a rough layout of how many months, years you guys hosted. I'd love to hear you in that atmosphere, interacting with callers and maybe arguing with Mark. Seems vastly entertaining. Although ultimately I completely understand why you left the show, and in many ways I think Sovereign Tech is further along the anarchist spectrum in terms of depth and quality of content. Thank you for that. So, okay, now, and I want to answer this because I think a lot of people, may want to hear this sort of stuff. I can't, every Sunday was, you want to talk about roller coasters. I mean, when you're taking live calls, it's a fucking roller coaster. I can't remember like any ones in particular. I can tell you. So I started on the show like maybe the last week or the last couple weeks before the end of 2012. So December, like the last couple Sundays of December 2012, I think I was on. If not the very last one, it was the one just before. And then I was on, from there on. And I'll tell you, the first episode that I did of Free Talk Live, like I kind of, maybe it wasn't the first, maybe it was like the second one. I came out swinging on my stance about guns. Now, this is not a popular thing for me to say or to talk about. And I've already talked about it, too many times on Sovereign Tech itself, but it would come up all the time on Free Talk Live. And anytime it did, obviously libertarians would call in like there's no tomorrow. What do you mean? Like they'd say, I want to ban guns. I don't want to ban guns. That's preposterous. Guns are just property. I'm not interested in banning anything. So anyway, if you want to listen to like those first 2-3 episodes, like the callers put me through the coals, or at least they try to. And I find those to be kind of interesting. I haven't listened back to them in forever. But so from the end of 2012, like literally the end of December of 2012 to, I guess, some point in 2014, maybe, is the time frame, and it was pretty much every Sunday is the time frame that I was on the show. Now, I can tell you that the latter episodes of 2014 were, there's a caller on Free Talk Live who I think still calls in. His name is James Witt. And this guy's just notorious. He ended up like, he would just call in he'd call in almost every night, but like he'd keep calling in on Sundays. And that was one of the things where we're like, okay, this show just isn't fun anymore because this guy was such an asshole. Not that we didn't verbally thrash him when he would call in. Of course we could and would. I mean, in fact, it's funny. There's listeners of the show of Sovereign Tech, I know, and of Free Talk Live who, like, I remember they specifically said in there's various perks and there's like little Free Talk Live groups here and there. And I remember them specifically saying, it's like, yeah, Stephanie and Brian, they're too smart for the show, and maybe it was, and please, I don't mean to sound braggadocious or anything. And I'm not, I'm trying to really have absolute humility here. But I mean, there's people who would call in thinking that they were just so on point. And I mean, we would just wreck them, like we would wreck them. Like anytime somebody would call about how great America was or Western civilization or something, like in fact, I remember one call in particular where I said to the guy, I was like, oh yeah. Or peaceful America, great America, caring America, like giving smallpox blankets to Indians. How many Indians? I mean, like that sort of thing, where you, anyway. So yeah, that's the time frame you want to look for, because I did it for about 2 years. Maybe it was into 2015 that we were still on, but I know I did it for about 2 years. So anyway, that's the best I can give you. I can't really think of like a great topic. There used to be there was a point where talking about, I remember this was kind of a big one, where talking about like, are you required to take care of a child? That's a subject that would come up often. Abortion would come up, and it would be interesting. And I mean, Stephanie and Mark would have some epic, fucking, like there was a time frame on that show where, and I was doing Sovereign Tech this whole time as well. But there was a time frame on that show where, like, I mean, Stephanie and Mark would have these, kind of epic verbal battles. They were awesome. And I mean, they would end the show and it would be no problem, and maybe we'd hang out for an hour afterwards and talk about it more. But I mean, there's never like any real animosity of any kind. But what would end up in a lot of those episodes is that I wouldn't say much until like literally the last segment of the show. And then I would just pop and like, I would just unleash, kind of the fire and brimstone. And so some, expect that with some of those Sunday episodes. Anyway, okay, enough of that. Let's get into another question here. 2, you've mentioned numerous times that you choose to abstain from drugs and alcohol. Although I freely admit that I have pretty heavy bias in this area. Daily marijuana smoker for several years, occasional dabbling in psychedelics. Also enjoy beer and bourbon on the regular. rock on, baby. Good for you. I must say it piques my curiosity considering other facets of your personality. I also have had a hard time understanding people who just have no interest in altering their consciousness, as opposed to someone who tried various substances first, but then decided it wasn't their bag. Obviously, I love how you always have a disclaimer that you think it's great other people enjoy those things. And yes, I go out of my way to make sure I tell people that, because in my experience, most of the time, anytime I talk, I complain about, or not complain. Anytime I say that I don't do, that I'm not interested in doing drugs or drinking, people get instantly defensive. It's really something, just something there. So that's why I have to run the heavy disclaimer that, look, I don't mind if you do this. You go right ahead, freedom, baby. Go for it. Right. Freedom, baby, is never having to say you're sorry. Isn't that what the devil said? Anyway, and I have no interest in preaching that I think everyone should do them. But for did I get all those things? Yeah. But for a hedonist anarchist who's willing to experiment on supplements to affect his libido, I find it interesting that you don't imbibe in other ways. Why is that? Okay. So the disclaimer's already out of the way. Good. You made my work easy for me, emailer. Thank you for that. So why don't, well, the easiest answer to give is that the science is in. Okay. Now, especially, with like marijuana and other things, like there's real, certainly there's a lot of FUD and a lot of crap out there, saying that, and I don't, anyway, let me finish. There's a lot of crap out there saying that, marijuana kills and all the shit, which it doesn't. Okay. Right. I mean, so you got to be careful when you say the science is in, or, what science are we talking about? Right. So it goes a little bit beyond, anything that I experiment with for my libido. Like, I mean, I heavily research anything that I'm caring to ingest, to try and be some kind of enhancement for me. And it goes a little bit more beyond, because again, yes, I'm taking supplements to try and increase libido. Not that my libido has a problem at all. It does not, which I talked about in a recent, it was the workout special, or workout Patreon episode that I did just recently. Yeah, I mean, and yep, marijuana is just a plant, right? And blah, 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 all the usual stuff, One of my concerns. So let me tell you a little story. This will be particular to the drinking. Okay. So there have been a couple times in my life where I did drink. Okay. I drank a couple times when I was a teenager. As in one time it was just one beer and it was an Old Mill, and obviously it tasted like horse piss. And have I tasted horse piss? Leave that to you. The second time was some sangria that I bought on a challenge because I was 16, and I've always looked a lot older than I am, partly because I've had a receding hairline since I was like 14, 15, which again, understand, I've been shaving my head since I was 17. So what I did was I slicked my hair back as far as I could. And, the average person at a liquor store isn't going to think that, that somebody with that kind of receding hairline was under the age of 21. Right. And so, because if he carded me, I would have been fucked. And this is the same thing I did to get into strip clubs at that age too. So I went in, I bought it, walked out, no problem. And my friends and we went back to my place, hung out in my bedroom, and, and we drank up a bit. So as the night goes on, and I don't remember exactly how many cups I had, but we were doing like these big on, like wine goblets. Okay. This wasn't, wasn't just like little thimblefuls or anything. Cause we bought, I bought one of these gigantic jars, or, flasks or whatever of it. So, I noticed as the night progressed that now, as I've said many times, I had the reputation as a teenager. Now everybody with a smartphone is a walking encyclopedia, so it doesn't mean much anymore. But at the time, that was not a thing, and the internet was relatively new. We're talking, if I was 16, we're talking like 1997. And I had the reputation in school and in life of being a walking encyclopedia. And I was proud of that. Like I liked knowing a lot of shit. Still do. That's why I don't do a show with notes, because I like to have it in my head. So, or, you know, that's not written down anyway. And I noticed, like, as somebody would ask me a question and we'd be talking about our usual shit, whatever we'd be talking about. And my friends and I, we always talked about the big stuff. You know, I mean, like, yeah, women would come up, you know, here and there, which is, you know, a conversation that a lot of teenage boys obviously have. But, you know, usually we were talking about like major things. And I mean, like, you know, things in outer space, not just science fiction, but like real science and all this. You know, I mean, that was our bag. And people would ask me questions and it would take, like, I couldn't just rattle it off. I couldn't just rattle out the answer. And it was freaking me out, you know, because I knew the answer, but I'm like, why the fuck can't I think of it? And so then, you know, I go out and I'm going to get I think I was going to get some pizza out of the refrigerator. And I go to open the refrigerator door and my hand misses the handle. And it missed the handle, not because I was tired or whatever. It's because, you know, because I was getting pretty drunk. And like, I just freaked out. I absolutely freaked out. I was, you know, I mean, I wasn't like making a scene or anything, but I was like, I am never doing this again. I do not like not being able to think of things quickly. I do not like not having full body control, like something as simple as missing the fucking handle to the refrigerator. I mean, I flat missed it. Like, it wasn't even close. And yeah, not okay with me at all. You know, I guess you could say I'm a control freak, but I'm a control freak as far as myself, you know, just for my own individuality and my own self-control. Okay. I'm not a control freak about wanting to control other people, quite the opposite. But when it comes to me, I want to be in control. I want full mental faculty. So drinking, yeah, not part of the program. Now, I did pick up drinking again when I was in the military, but that was for very obvious reasons, because I knew the shit I was doing was, or, you know, deep down, unconsciously, I guess you could say, I knew I was doing some horrendous shit and I needed to dull it. So, and, you know, maybe at that time, honestly, like if, you know, marijuana or some other drugs were legal, maybe I would have gotten into them then. You know, not to say that that's why everybody does those sorts of things. Okay. You know, to dull some kind of pain or something like that. I'm not making that statement at all. I'm just saying, I know that's why I was drinking, and it might've been why I would end up doing other things. So as far as like why I don't do drugs, it's kind of the same thing, to where, and I've seen it, actually my oldest brother, is quite I mean, like, you know, he does sheets of acid, the whole thing, frankly. I mean, he does all of it, and I see how he reacts to it. And I've seen how plenty of other people react to it. And it appears to me that there's a complete lack of control. I mean, I get it. I understand like the idea that it's an expansion of consciousness. And certainly, I mean, Carl Sagan's talked about it. You know, he wrote tons of stuff about marijuana, you know, what was under Dr. X or something like that at the time. Lots of other people have talked about taking LSD. I know, like, taking micro LSD right now is a very popular thing in Silicon Valley, because supposedly it allows people to focus better and, you know, really harness their creative abilities, perhaps, and all this. And I'm intrigued by a lot of that. Now, LSD, I'm a little concerned about, because there's interesting evidence that was, you know, that's created by the CIA for very specific purposes. And I know Steve Jobs took it and he's so happy he did, blah, blah, blah. But I don't know. Anyway, but forget about LSD. There's a great book that I recommend people check out. And this is not an indictment against people doing drugs. Go ahead. You know, I love you. Please do what you like. But there's a great book called Drugs as a Weapon Against Us by John Potash. And in this, he talks about, now this guy isn't exactly an anarchist, but I think he'd fit under like a more, you know, left-leaning libertarian, I think. And he talks about how, and he has really good evidence for it, that drugs were introduced into activist groups to quell them, to shut them down. Like particularly Black Panthers. You know, we're talking about times like in the 60s and 70s and all that all of this was designed to you know, to either make docile or make controllable these different groups that had perhaps real potential to overthrow the U.S. government. Now, I have no interest in violently overthrowing a government. And I'm not saying all these groups did either. Okay. But when you read that book, things get interesting. I mean, when you consider, how a lot of that stuff works. Again, not saying that drugs are bad. Nope. Not saying that by any stretch, but my experience, what I've seen of people with it, like there is a very different, not so much on point way that I see people act. I've always said myself, like actually, so the one time I've said this often to people is that if I was ever to do drugs, the drug I would do is cocaine, because I want a drug that like, that hypes me up, that like, makes me, I remember, and obviously they weren't shining a good light on drugs with this. But what was that show with Michael J. Fox? Was that Family Ties? Maybe it wasn't Family Ties. Anyway, when Michael J. Fox, he plays like this young Republican kid. It was a sitcom in the 80s, family sitcom. And there's the episode where he does cocaine and he like goes out in the back and he starts digging ditches and all this stuff. Like he can't stop, and I remember seeing that thinking like, oh, that's cool. Yeah, I want to take that. I want to take something that actually allows me to do more. All right. Right. But that's kind of the other thing too, is that, I mean, believe it or not, I'm actually a pretty chill guy. Like when I'm not behind the mic, I mean, I'm fairly chill, and I'm not in some kind of like social environment. Not that I'm in any way putting on some kind of facade, by no means. But yeah, like I don't really need anything to calm me down. Despite, my ranting and raving on the show, I'm actually a very calm and collected guy, that really, I don't worry about much. I mean, this isn't meant to be a boast, but like, I mean, I've already almost died. I've been shot. I know, I've had that moment where your life flashes before your eyes, right? Metaphorically. And, once you kind of experience that, I mean, a lot of other things, well, they are what they are. And, you kind of take the punches as they come, after an experience like that. That was when I was in the military, by the way. So, anyway, yeah. And also, I mean, one would have to, this is the point where maybe a lot of people would disagree with me, and again, totally fine. I feel like that if your brain is capable of doing certain chemical reactions that somehow enhance it, that there's got to be some kind of, and obviously marijuana is a plant, it's natural, but there's got to be some kind of like other way, perhaps some way of self-control where you can bring your brain to, to those levels and whatever else. Maybe it takes marijuana, whatever. I mean, again, I'm not condemning anybody for doing it. I say, rock and roll, have a great time. But yeah, I have some skepticism, on a lot of this. Well, for another quick example. So you have guys like Graham Hancock, right? Who, give those really wild, speeches, like TEDx speeches that get banned, about psilocybin mushrooms and all this shit. Or we have people talking about ayahuasca or ibogaine or I don't know, whatever the fuck they're talking about. Okay. And I don't mean that with disrespect, but usually these people, when they talk about this sort of thing, you either appeal to one or two things when it comes to drugs, or when you come to those kinds of drugs. You like ones that supposedly help you and perhaps expand consciousness or break down walls within your mind and all this stuff, which I'm not saying they don't do that. Just explaining. Usually they'll either appeal to the naturalness of it, right? Which is a great appeal for marijuana. Absolutely. It is natural. Or they appeal to the historicity of it. In that one, the historicity argument is where I have total objection. I mean, like I have a real problem with that. Because, like Graham Hancock would talk about psilocybin, other people would talk about ayahuasca, or they talk about ibogaine, and they say, well, it's been done for thousands of years in South America, or it's been done for thousands of years here or there. And it's, and the way they sell what it does for you. I mean, like you take ayahuasca, people say, oh yeah, it's like knocking off 10 years of therapy. Now, I mean, just that statement alone, forgetting the historicity, that statement alone is very troubling to me. Okay. Because I believe in the old adage of there's no royal road to geometry, which means there's no shortcuts to real knowledge. There's no shortcuts. You have to do the work. And saying that you can take something that's going to knock off 10 years of therapy, bullshit. Like, my red flags go off like there's no tomorrow. Okay, when I hear that sort of thing. But then the other claims are, is that, it does this wonderful thing for the human mind. And baked in with this notion that it does 10 years of therapy for you. I mean, why isn't South America, if this stuff does all this wonderful shit for human beings and it's been practiced for thousands upon thousands of years, why isn't South America they should be living the Star Trek life right now. If it does that much for the human mind, it doesn't make any sense to me. I don't see any more empathy. In fact, for fuck's sake, they're tossing, children into volcanoes back when these drugs were supposedly popular. Sorry, I find your claims specious. I'm not talking to the emailer. I'm talking to these other people. I find it very hard to believe, that sort of things, that some of these drugs, do that sort of stuff because there's no historical fucking evidence for it. And yet the appeal is historicity. So, yeah, I guess a lot of it comes down to self-control and my concern of losing it. And also, as I said, when I said earlier that the science is in a lot of these things, the science is absolutely in that it fucks with your penis. No thanks. Whiskey dick is just so well known. You don't need scientists to tell you about whiskey dick. It's a fucking thing. Everybody knows it. It's why it has a name. That's why it's called whiskey dick, even though nobody really drinks whiskey much. Well, that's not true. A lot of people do, but you know what I mean? So anyway, I hope that answers that. And boy, do I hope that none of that was insulting, at least not towards you. I will happily insult, a lot of this ayahuasca bullshit because I don't buy it. I don't buy it for 2 seconds, especially, kind of like we were talking about earlier in this episode. Some of the people that I may have been referencing earlier when I was complaining about libertarians and anarcho-capitalists are big pushers of things like ayahuasca and some others. And I can tell you that in their personal life, it clearly doesn't show. Not based upon the claims that are supposed to come with it. They are full of fucking shit. So I wonder if the drug is, and anyway, okay, let's get on to another one. How are we doing on time? Holy shit, we're over an hour. Okay, we got two more that I'd really love to get to here. So, okay, number 3, do you reject all forms of spiritual theory since you're an atheist? I've heard you mention Jainism before on the podcast, but I don't know if I've ever heard you discuss specific theories. For example, do you think some form of reincarnation, karma, or consciousness ascension through meditation / spiritual practice is possible? Reincarnation, no. So I am actually a huge fan of meditating. In fact, I call it zero tasking. I am a big fan of meditating. I meditate almost every morning for anywhere from 15 minutes to 30 minutes. I have a very specific routine that I go through, and I firmly believe that it helps me get through every day. And the days that I don't meditate, I feel it. Like I know. And I think meditating definitely, you want to talk about consciousness enhancement? Meditating. Absolutely. In everything, like even in sex, like, because you're so much more in touch with what's going on at any given moment. And you can, you can quiet things to really like take things in and feel them. Sex gets better. Everything gets better, when you meditate. It's really, really a powerful thing. So some form of reincarnation. Yeah, I don't see that. Karma. What is karma? I know what karma is, but is there a certain piece that perhaps you display a little more when you're somebody that meditates, maybe a little more of a confidence? There's something to be said. Like, I think there are so many, between humans. Okay. Between humans, I think that there's smells, there's little actions, there's body language, there's what the Japanese call injindenshin, where like it's the language that it's not body language, but it's the language that gets spoken without words. There's so many different things that make up a human interaction. If you are more in control of your body, like you display a very different, what some could call an aura. I mean, it's not a spiritual thing, but some people, that might be the best term for it. In fact, I had somebody ask me a question, because recently I've talked about working out, and people, heard me mention that I'm a Kravist, that I practice Krav Maga. And people ask me about self-defense. I mean, one of the first things in self-defense isn't even learning how to throw a punch. Well, okay, actually, if somebody really knows self-defense, they don't throw punches. like that is an afterthought. That is for, much later into the confrontation. In fact, if I see somebody, like, this is funny. If I see somebody, if not, I haven't been in a fight in forever, but if somebody were to fight me and they raised their fists, and I mean, this is no boast, I would just be like, okay, this isn't going to last long. Because nobody that really knows self-defense, like, raises fists. I mean, at least today, if you learn like a modern, kind of self-defense form that actually, works against, say, guns or knives or things like this. I'm not saying that people that raise their fists aren't good fighters or something. I'm sure they are, in some way. But like, if we're talking about actual, like, street self-defense, sorry, like, I'm more concerned about the guy with open palms than anybody else. Anyway, where was I going with that? All right. So there's a certain attitude, okay, that various body language, and again, a multitude of factors that can be put off by a person, and really good self-defense schools will teach you this. It's not just like a part of Krav or anything. In fact, I don't really know of anything that teaches Krav. Or that teaches that within Krav itself, but, more like traditional, I guess, self-defense schools. And I don't mean martial arts either, just like, straight self-defense. They talk about this, that, there's a certain look, right, that you can give that says that, all right, not messing with this one. Maybe it's a certain confidence, whatever it ends up happening to be. So there's something to that. I mean, karma is more like, do you get back what you deserve? I understand that. But I think there really is something to learning a lot of self-control, especially through like meditating and all of this, and being very confident in who you are and what you do and what you can do, that can give off a vibe, for lack of a better word. But there's no real spirituality there. I think a lot of it's very scientific. I'll tell you this, like, I think, in fact, Stephanie she practices yoga, pretty heavily. And she's also a PhD. I mean, she's, a biochemist and all this stuff. And she will even tell you that there's a lot of stuff that, is claimed by the ancient yogis and all that actually make a ton of sense. Now they were applying it to chakras and all this different stuff, right? But what they didn't realize is, they were seeing the effect. They just were misapplying the cause, and yes, yoga was good for them. Yoga was creating the benefits that they saw. They just didn't have the scientific knowledge to explain it. And so they chalked it up to, chakras and all this shit. Right. There's a lot of, Eastern medicine, alternative medicine and all this stuff. There's a lot to a lot of that. And yes, it has historicity on its side. And now, if Western civilization wasn't so, goddamn arrogant, maybe it could have a lot of science on its side too. So, sometimes these ancient ideas have a real basis. Nothing woo-woo, of course, nothing like, you're controlling your reality or anything, but, there's something to them. I'm definitely open to that. Consciousness ascension. Yeah. I'd love it if it was like Stargate, where like Daniel Jackson and SG-1 could ascend and everything. And then, it's sort of an out of body experience or something like that. Or maybe like Doctor Strange, right? They did that in that movie. Yeah. I don't have any evidence for it or really any kind of personal experience. So I can't make that claim, that I think that sort of thing is a thing. And it's an area that, I really like, I just haven't done a ton of exploring in. So yeah, not really into the, a lot of the spirituality and all that stuff. It's fine if people are. I know amazing people that are really into that sort of thing. I think, there's something to, I don't know how far I want to go with that. But yeah, I think I answered that. A lot of that stuff I don't exactly buy into, but some of it I think has a lot of basis in absolute scientific fact, that, we're just now kind of learning about, that this is how the human body works. And, go ye therefore and do likewise. So there you go. Yeah. But the reincarnation one, I don't, the only argument I've ever heard for that sort of thing that I found intriguing was actually from an episode of Star Trek Voyager. It was in the first season, I think, where they find that planet where like they beam their dead away to like these rocks or something. And Janeway at the end of the episode talks about it because they think they go to an afterlife, but really, they don't. They just go to these asteroids that they get beamed to. Janeway talks about how they picked up these energy signatures that would, go from the body out. And what were those energy signatures, right? And I've heard people kind of make the argument where, they say something to the effect, well, energy doesn't go anywhere, or, energy doesn't get destroyed. It just takes different forms and whatever. So where exactly does the energy go that comprises you and all this stuff? And I've heard people make that sort of claim, and yeah, it's interesting, but does that mean your energy goes somewhere to become, ends up in another body or something like that? Yeah, I don't have the evidence for that. So, there you go. Again, not necessarily insulting that sort of shit. Just saying that I don't really have any evidence to point at it. Okay. So number 4 on the list, actually, I'm going to answer that one privately. But anyway, emailer, and there was more to the email, but I think we've covered the gist, and I'm really, really honored. I love how you shared your whole experience of getting to Liberty, how you found out about Sovereign Tech, what exactly that means to you. That was, wow. To say I'm honored, and I mean this, to say I'm honored is not like, there's no words. I talk about it all the time that the English language sucks. Well, this is one of those cases where there just aren't enough adjectives. Thank you so much for that. Okay. So we're at an hour and 11 minutes. So I am going to, I'm going to give a quick review of another movie that I saw this week. As I said earlier in the show, what do I do when Stephanie's not around? I just watch Star Trek and go see movies. But a review for a movie that I was very excited about. And that was Resident Evil, the final chapter. So I just caught this the other day, and this is the 6th or 7th film in the franchise. It's amazing how many Resident Evil movies, have been made. And the final chapter is supposed to be, Paul W.S. Anderson said, yes, absolutely, this is the last one. And I'm going to just say spoiler alerts, because I'm not sure that I'm not going to reveal something spoilery. So you've been warned. I liked it. I thought it was good. It wasn't the best of the Resident Evil movies, in my opinion. In fact, maybe it was the worst. Not that makes it bad, but it was the one I liked the least out of it. It really hinted at a lot of cues from other films, so it was kind of an amalgamation, which is sort of fitting, honestly. Even the Bible does that, right? Where the book of Revelation, 90% of it is just other verses from other parts of the Bible, really, or other prophecies from other parts of the Bible. So, the last chapter of something being a remix has been done forever. So I thought it worked as far as that goes. And it amazingly still had twists. Like there are new things you find out in this that colors and changes everything you know about all of the previous films. And that's a real challenge to pull off, in my opinion, because they already did enough twists. So many, twists, story twists and turns, with these movies. I was just amazed at that. Mila Jovovich looked fantastic, of course. And once again, holy shit, Ruby Rose was in this too? I didn't even know that. She's like in all my favorite franchises now. We talked about her last week on Sovereign Tech, on episode 213 or 214, where she was in John Wick 2. Then she was in Triple X, Return of Xander Cage. She's in everything. She is great. Oh man. She's literally, I think she's my new favorite actress. I was in awe. So anyway, that was cool that she was in it. That was a very nice bonus, in my opinion. Yeah, I mean, the action was really good. There were some really, really interesting moves, done, like some really cool looking practical action that I've never seen in any other movie. And that's also saying something. There's kind of a reenactment of the laser scene. You see that in the trailers, so I'm not really giving anything away there. Yeah. And again, you find out something totally, there's really kind of a big reveal in this movie. So if I told you the ending, it would really spoil it. So I'm not going to do that. But yeah, I enjoyed it. I don't think now a couple interesting things about it. Okay, first off, Paul W.S. Anderson is one of my favorite directors. So obviously I'm biased. And also, like in my opinion, and I've said this before when I've talked about the Resident Evil movies, Mila Jovovich as the character of Alice or Project Alice does not get enough credit for being, everybody's always talking about, oh, we need more female heroines. We need more female badasses in Hollywood and all that, right? I'm not saying maybe you aren't talking about that, but when you go online and you read the shit from like Gizmodo or Jezebel or some other bullshit, they'll always bring that up, that there just aren't enough. Why Mila Jovovich doesn't get any credit for being, a female badass for almost 15 years, maybe longer than 15 years. I have no idea. I mean, she's been nonstop and she does a great job. She looks totally legit in what she's doing. She fits the bill while frankly, looking fantastic. The same goes for Kate Beckinsale with Underworld. Never gets any credit, So I don't know. I mean, those are the aspects of like, kind of SJWs and feminists where I'm just like, you guys have some kind of strange agenda, like, and because I can point to you where these characters are. I'm not saying there doesn't need to be more, there does, but the fact that they don't bring up the ones that are out there and don't give them any credit or adulation, yeah, you're kind of full of shit. So anyway, I love it for that. I love Paul W.S. Anderson, and I think she's great. The interesting thing is, and this kind of dovetails off of what we talked about in episode 214 with the movie The Great Wall that we were reviewing, where, like I said, that movie was not made for American audiences. It was made for Asian audiences first, and they knew that that's where they would make all their money. Now, Resident Evil, the final chapter, actually came out in December of 2016 in Asian markets, in Japan, Korea, and China specifically. And then finally, end of January, 2017, it came out in America. Now, it did crazy money. And I think it only had like a $20 million budget. I mean, like wicked. Well, I almost brought out my New Englander there. Wicked cheap. I mean, wicked inexpensive budget. Okay. I mean, so inexpensive. Like, I mean, this is a low budget fucking film, which is also impressive with how much it does. That frankly, like, I'd almost be surprised that there isn't another one. Like, why not? I mean, in fact, really, this series, for almost every entry in the series, except for maybe the second one, except for maybe Apocalypse, has been a low budget film. And they've always done way more than their budget. That's why they keep making them. Why stop? Especially they did like 300 million in China. 300 million for a Resident Evil movie. This is the highest grossing Resident Evil movie of all time. That's crazy. And especially when it's not the best, like not even close. I mean, I understand why, because now, like I said in the main Sovereign Tech episode this week, they're looking at these, these foreign markets and saying, oh no, we can make our ton of money here if we give it to them first and all this. So that's the thing now, folks. Anyway, I'm glad it made the money. I mean, I think the series, it's, overall needs that kind of money. The reviews have been actually kind of kind. Personally, I think the last one was Retribution, the one before the final chapter. I thought that was the best one. And here's kind of, if I have two main complaints with the film, here are the two complaints with the final chapter. And I'm not really, it's kind of a spoiler, but not really. That is that the end, I thought the ending to Retribution was awesome, where they're on top of the White House and all of the zombies, all of the T-virus infected things, are like storming the White House, and Wesker is president, and they have to go into this big battle. I wanted that big battle. Like that. It actually pissed me off that all of that was almost completely ignored. I mean, they explain it away, but it was almost completely ignored in this movie. Or, I mean, it was completely ignored in this movie. The movie did not take off right after the fact, which is different for the Resident Evil movies, because most of them have really taken place one after the other, like in very quick succession. And so, yeah, that disappointed me, because that was what really put Retribution over the top for me, was like that ending was awesome. Like that was so cool. The other odd thing about this, very, very few. I mean, like there's you see some big swaths of zombies, but almost no zombies. Most of the action is all human against human action, which probably speaks to its low budget, of course. But that was kind of weird. Like, I mean, there's some flying, creature type zombies. But otherwise, yeah, I mean, there's almost no, I mean, you get practically no zombies in this. Maybe there's like one scene. So, I mean, that's okay, because I'm not the biggest zombie fan anyway. I'm a Resident Evil fan, not necessarily a zombie genre fan. But I just found that to be like, and I don't know how many people missed that or not, but I mean, it just seemed weird, that kind of action wasn't really in it. So, but otherwise, like I said, I thought it was a very good movie. I thought it was a nice ending, to the entire series. I am just ducky if they never make another one. That's totally okay with me. But if they do, well, hey, okay. But again, I'm going to be shocked if they don't, just because the amount of money it's making is crazy. Like, especially for a movie of that budget. I mean, it's how many hundreds of percent, has it made? I mean, it's making up really for the entire series. So anyway, all right. So that's enough of that. Of course, we will have a new Sex and Science Hour come out this week, and there will be a new Sovereign Tech. I've got a doozy planned for you, and some surprises, perhaps, for it. So I'll leave it at that. And boy, this is one of our longer Q&A episodes, so I'm going to stop it now. And hope you had fun with it. Hope I wasn't too verbose. Well, how can I not be verbose? I'm the only one doing the show. Jeez. There. I'll see you on the other side.
You just experienced Sovereign Tech. Go to sovereigntech.com, that's SOVRYN tech.com, and connect with us there. Find links from today's show and catch our podcast feed. Sovereign Tech is copy heart. Copying art is an act of love, and love is not subject to law. So please share the show however you like. Welcome to the evolution.